Hey guys, just wanted to go over this paper with you, and I know it kind of stinks trying to work on a computer. That was one of the comments Bradley made, but it's kind of the best we got right now. So you didn't actually have to turn this in either, um, but I want to go over it just to help you prepare for your test, and um, you also have the study mate you can do. So we'll try to get you ready. Let's take a look at this, and if I can um, add in the answers for you here, that might also be helpful. But it says put the following in order from smallest to greatest. So I guess the first thing would be organism. That's the smallest thing. Secondly, we go from to a population of animals, and so that would be 2. Then if you get more than one population, we call that a community, so that would be 3. And then ecosystem would be, you add in the non-living things to the community, so it'd be 4. And then finally biome would be 5. So I guess that's the order, or maybe you wrote those out, but that'll work. Okay, the difference between a community and ecosystem. An ecosystem includes the non-living. So that's really the main difference when we talk about community. We're just referring to living things, but ecosystem is non-living. All right. Next, we have the difference between abiotic and biotic. All right, biotic is living. So you probably knew that was a pretty simple one. All right, limiting factor. Well, this is talking about an ecosystem. You can only have so many animals. You reach the carrying capacity. So limiting factor is it's whatever you run out of first. It's the factor that limits the carrying capacity. That limits the, let's put CC, the carrying capacity, or it's what you run out of first. So an example that would be in a desert. What's the limiting factor? Well, probably water in a desert. It's going to be your limiting factor. So that's that. Carrying capacity is the largest amount that an ecosystem can hold. So and key thing there, largest amount can hold over time. That's a pretty big deal over time, because the population can go above the carrying capacity, but it's for a limited amount of time. Okay, 6. What happens when the population of animals exceeds the carrying capacity? It's overpopulated. And then animals are eventually going to die off or get diseased, or so we'll just say animals will die or something like that. Whatever. Okay. Out of the energy that an animal consumes or a plant makes, what gets passed on to the next level? Well, we call this the 10% rule. So it's only 10%. So 10% rule there. Let me scroll back up here. Find question 8. What do food chains normally have? Why do they have 4 levels? Now, I'm just going to put the word energy, or not enough energy. So by the time you get 10% of 10% of 10%, you don't have much left. So there's not enough energy for that last predator to only eat the animal in that food chain. So that's the answer you want to remember. All right, for a food chain, you can just put something simple there for a plant. I don't know how you did an arrow, but we'll do it this way: plant, and then mouse. I think this is one in the notes, so we'll use it. And then snake, and you could have went on, but you don't have to necessarily. But so that's a food chain. The arrows go up. Arrows move up. And why? Well, we show energy. That's why the arrows go up. All right. Why make a food web? Well, the thing, when you see a food web, you notice that all the animals are connected. So maybe by making that food web, you see how everything's connected, how animals can affect one another. And maybe you do that study and you see how two animals that didn't seem connected actually are, and you might understand the population a little bit better. Alright, if you watch that video on biomagnification, what it said that as pesticides move up the food chain, they become more concentrated. So it gets worse. So the animals at the top are affected most. And that's why eagles, we about lost the eagle and the osprey, because these chemicals we didn't notice them at the bottom of the food chain, but as they went up, it became more of a problem. So what consumer are affected most by biomagnification? And you would say the top, or in this example, the third level consumer. All right. On to question 13. Biomagnification of pesticides has caused harm to eagles, ospreys, and falcons. What was the pesticide, and how did it get to these birds? Well, it was DDT. If you want to spell out the whole word, go right ahead. But it got to them, it got in the rivers. So the farmers were spraying DDT, but it was, when it rained, it ran off into the rivers, got into the food chain, and eventually made it to the eagle and the osprey. So again, a reminder that what we do on land can influence and impact what happens in water. Okay, give a reason it would be important to monitor the population of animals in an environment. So if the population changes, that tells us is an issue. So you watch animals, if their population drops or they become overpopulated, that might be an indication that there's something wrong in that ecosystem. So that's one way of keeping track of ecosystems. Watch the animals. The animals will talk to you if we will just listen. No, in a way they can tell us what's going on. All right, 15. Caden was asked, how do you do this one? But I don't know exactly how you do it on a computer, but I drew a line and pasted it in there. But that's what you see in a carrying capacity. You see how the line will go up above the carrying capacity, and it drops back down, then above, and eventually it kind of levels out. But that's typical of carrying capacity. And how do you know the carrying capacity? Well, this dotted line is in between the peaks and the troughs, and that's how you know an ecosystem has reached that carrying capacity. The animals start to drop off. All right. Some different species of animals have a symbiotic relationship. What does this mean? They live close together, and their populations affect one another. So symbiotic, we said clownfish and sea anemone, Nemo had trouble saying that too. Or the shark and the remora, or these parasites. So there's different kinds. I'm not going to ask you a lot about those, but I want you to know what symbiosis is and maybe one example. So difference between a producer and a consumer. Well, producers make their own food. Consumers will eat food from a producer or another consumer. Alright, in the ocean, what's the main producer? You might be thinking plants, but actually it's plankton. And we call them phytoplankton. Phytoplankton. Again, we don't appreciate that. They actually produce quite a bit of oxygen also, and very important for ocean food chains, especially in the open ocean. They just float around and provide food, start the food chain. Okay, habitat. It's the physical environment of an animal. It's where they live. That's just what we call habitat. If you found that in the notes, hopefully. An alien species. So it's a species from another ecosystem. A lot of times they get introduced, and it can be a problem, and that's what 21 asks, why is it sometimes harmful? And I know from looking at your other work, a lot of you knew this. There's no natural predators to control the population. So a lot of times they become overpopulated. You know, you could we mentioned ladybugs or honeysuckle. And we don't think of predators on plants. That's probably not a great idea, but ladybugs would be a good example. I know you guys read a little bit about the Burmese python in the Everglades. It's not necessarily Ohio, but they've become a problem. So that's an example of that. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. And like I said, take care of yourself, study up, and you'll do well on the test. I know it's going to be kind of strange taking the test at home, but do the best you can. Try to be honest about it. Give me an honest grade, and if you need to retake it, we'll still do retakes, so don't stress about it, but study up, do your best, and you communicate with me if you need to retake that, and we'll get that set up. Alright, we'll talk to you guys later.